Welcome to Lento English. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
1. Introduction. The United Nations General Assembly met in a very large hall. This was a place where leaders from almost every country in the world came together. It was a meeting of great importance. Delegates, presidents, and prime ministers gathered from many different nations. They traveled from all parts of the globe to be there. The purpose was to discuss global issues and find solutions for big problems. The United Nations was built on the idea of countries working together for peace. On this particular Tuesday, the atmosphere inside the assembly hall was unique. It was a mix of anticipation and underlying tension. Many important people sat in rows, waiting. Their faces showed a range of emotions. Some looked hopeful, others serious, and a few seemed worried. Journalists and news cameras were everywhere, ready to capture every moment. The world was watching closely, knowing that the discussions here could affect millions of lives. The day's agenda included several important speeches. One speech in particular was keenly awaited. It was the turn of the United States President Donald Trump. As his name was announced, a quiet murmur went through the large room. All heads turned towards the main entrance. President Trump walked confidently towards the podium. The podium was a raised platform with microphones positioned at the front of the hall. Bright lights illuminated the stage, making him the center of attention. He took his place, standing before the gathered assembly. He looked out at the sea of faces, representing nearly 200 different countries. A powerful feeling of expectation filled the air. Everyone present knew that President Trump's words often caused strong reactions. His speeches were known for their directness and their ability to spark debate. People wondered what new ideas or challenges he would present today. Would he speak about international cooperation, or would he focus on issues specific to his country? The silence in the hall grew deeper. Every eye was fixed on the American president. He was about to deliver a significant address. This speech would cover many important topics. These included how countries deal with each other, rules about people moving across borders, and the global discussion about Earth's changing climate. The moment felt heavy with meaning. The future of certain international relations might be shaped by what was said in the next hour. Leaders hoped for progress and understanding. However, they also knew that strong disagreements were possible. The air was thick with unspoken questions and a sense of gravity. The entire world seemed to pause, waiting for President Trump to begin. He took a breath and then prepared to speak. 2. A different start. U.S. President Donald Trump began his much-anticipated speech at the United Nations General Assembly. This was a very important event for world leaders. Everyone in the large hall watched and waited. The atmosphere was serious and full of expectation. However, the very start of his address was quite unexpected. As President Trump stepped to the podium, he found that the teleprompter was not working. This special screen usually shows the speaker's words, helping them to follow their text. Without it, he would have to speak without reading from prepared notes. This was a surprise for everyone present. Despite this technical issue, President Trump did not seem troubled. He chose to make a light-hearted comment about the situation. I do not mind making this speech without a teleprompter, President Trump announced to the audience. He then added, because the teleprompter is not working. A small chuckle went through the room. He continued by saying he felt very happy to be up here with everyone. He explained that speaking without the teleprompter allowed him to speak more from the heart. He then joked that the person responsible for operating the teleprompter was in big trouble. His words broke some of the tension in the room. The teleprompter problem became a small talking point. Later, a United Nations official made a statement. The official clarified that the teleprompter being used was not operated by the UN itself. Instead, it was under the control of the White House staff. This detail was important to show that the UN's own equipment was functioning correctly. After President Trump completed his address, the President of the UN General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, spoke. She wanted to address the questions that had arisen about the non-working teleprompter. Ms. Baerbock, who had served as Germany's foreign minister earlier in the year, reassured the assembly. She told them, "Do not worry, the UN teleprompters are working perfectly." Her comment further suggested that the issue was specific to the equipment brought by the president's team. This unusual start made the speech memorable. President Trump continued to deliver his message, speaking directly to the assembly. The moment showed his spontaneous style. The unexpected technical problem meant he spoke more freely than planned. This different beginning set a unique tone for the important address to the world. 3. Talks on borders. President Trump continued his important speech, shifting his focus to the topic of national borders and immigration. He shared his strong opinions on how countries should manage people entering their lands. He told the leaders present that nations which were too welcoming of immigrants were, in his view, destroying their own countries. He used powerful words to describe his deep concerns about this issue. He looked at the situation in Europe as a clear example. President Trump explained that he believed Europe was facing very serious problems. He claimed that European countries had been invaded by a force of illegal aliens, unlike anything ever seen before. He repeated that illegal aliens were pouring into Europe, causing much trouble for those nations. He painted a picture of a continent struggling greatly with these challenges to its identity and stability. President Trump then spoke about the policies his own administration put in place in the United States. He described how his government handled migrants and people seeking asylum. He said that they took strong action at the border. He explained that once they started to detain and deport every person who crossed the border without permission, the number of people trying to enter simply stopped. He also mentioned removing illegal aliens who were already in the United States. He believed these firm steps were very successful in protecting the country's boundaries. He shared what he saw as a significant achievement of his policies. He stated clearly that for 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering the United States had been 0. This, he said, showed how effective his approach was in stopping illegal entry. He presented this as proof that his methods worked. President Trump gave direct advice to other countries. He told them that they have to end it now if they want to save their nations. He confidently stated that he was really good at this stuff. meaning he had a deep understanding of how to control borders and manage immigration effectively. He warned that if other nations did not follow his advice and implement strict border controls, their countries would go to hell. He emphasized that strong borders were key to a nation's safety, security, and future. He believed his ideas offered the best path forward for all countries facing similar issues, with people crossing their borders without permission. His message was clear: secure borders are vital. 4. A message to Europe. President Trump then spoke about the war in Ukraine. He looked at the European nations present. He said that some countries in Europe were not doing enough. He believed they needed to help more to stop the war. He emphasized that the conflict was a serious matter for all. He talked about energy. He said that some countries still bought oil and gas from Russia. He mentioned that China and India also bought a lot of Russian oil. He said this helped Russia pay for the war. He thought it was wrong for NATO allies to keep buying Russian energy. He urged Europe to put more pressure on Moscow. He wanted them to use their economic power. He explained that Europe's trade with Russia was still quite large. He noted that in 2024, Europe's trade with Russia was less than before the war. It was about 1/4 of what it was in 2021. But he said this amount was still more than what India traded with Russia. He also pointed out that Europe bought more Russian natural gas in 2024 than the year before. These purchases, he suggested, lessened the impact of sanctions. President Trump also spoke about the United States. He said the U.S. still bought some things from Russia, like chemicals. However, he noted that the total trade between the U.S. and Russia was much lower than it used to be. This showed, in his opinion, America's commitment to limiting trade. He then gave a warning. He said that the United States was ready to add new taxes, called tariffs, on goods from Russia. This would happen if there was no peace agreement for the war. But he said these tariffs would only work well if European countries joined the U.S. He wanted them to use the exact same measures. He believed a united front was necessary. He stressed that Europe was closer to the conflict. He said, "We have an ocean between us. You are right there." He meant that Europe had a special role to play due to its closeness. He felt that European nations had to step it up. This meant they needed to do more and show stronger actions. He believed they should not continue their current actions regarding Russian energy. He called on them to act strongly against Russia and to show more unity with the United States. He ended this part of his speech by saying that Europe needed to change its approach for peace. 5. The climate debate. President Trump then spoke about climate science. He shared his long-held opinions on the subject. He began by reminding everyone about how people talked about the Earth's climate many years ago. He stated that in the 1920s and 1930s, some people spoke about global cooling. They believed the world would become very cold. They thought this cooling would cause great harm to the planet and its people. Later, he continued, the ideas changed. People then started to speak about global warming. They thought the world would get much hotter. They worried that this warming would also bring many problems and harm the planet greatly. But then, he explained, the weather began to get cooler again. Because of this change, he said, people changed the name. Now they simply call it climate change. He believed this new name was used so that no matter what happened with the weather, people could always say it was climate change. If the temperature goes higher or lower, or if anything else happens with the climate, it is still called climate change. President Trump called climate change the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. He stated this was his personal opinion. He firmly said that no matter what occurs with the weather or environment, people connect it to climate change. He repeated that there was no more talk of global warming or global cooling. He believed that all of these predictions, made by organizations like the United Nations and many others, were wrong. He suggested that these predictions were often made for reasons that were not good. He then gave a strong and clear warning to other countries. He told them they must move away from what he called this green scam. He warned that if nations did not stop following these ideas, their countries would surely fail. He added that he was very good at predicting future events. He felt that these specific green policies were not helpful and would be bad for nations. He urged all the leaders present to seriously reconsider their current actions and policies focused on the environment. He emphasized that his warnings were very important for their future success. He wanted his message on climate change to be heard clearly. He felt very strongly about this subject. 6. The peacemaker. President Trump then moved his speech to focus on the topic of global peace. He presented himself as a key figure who brought an end to conflicts around the world. He informed the assembled world leaders that he had successfully ended 7 different wars. He explained that these conflicts were very severe, causing countless thousands of people to die. He expressed that it was a great honor for him to have achieved these outcomes. He then proceeded to list the specific conflicts he claimed to have resolved. First, he mentioned the disputes between Cambodia and Thailand. He also spoke about the conflict that occurred between Kosovo and Serbia. He described another very harsh and violent war between the Congo and Rwanda. Furthermore, he included the disputes between Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. He emphasized that such a record of ending wars was unique and had never been seen before. President Trump drew a clear distinction between his actions and the role of the United Nations. He stated that he had to take these steps himself, rather than the UN fulfilling its purpose. He remarked that it was a shame he had to intervene. He strongly criticized the United Nations, claiming that the organization did not even try to help in any of these situations. He even added a light-hearted comment about his personal experience with the UN, saying that the only thing he received from them was an escalator that stopped working in the middle of his ascent. This showed his belief that he was more effective than the large international body. Many people who support President Trump have given him the special title of the Peace President. They believe that his direct involvement in resolving these conflicts makes him deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize. The idea of him being a peace president was a central part of his message, aiming to show his strength and effectiveness on the global stage. He wanted to be seen as a leader who actively worked to stop fighting. However, some countries that were involved in the conflicts he listed did not agree with President Trump's claims of mediation. For example, One particular nation publicly stated that its border clashes with a neighboring country ended through direct discussions between their own military leaders. They made it clear that the United States did not play a role in mediating that specific peace agreement. Despite these different accounts, President Trump continued to emphasize his personal role in bringing an end to major global disputes. He highlighted his direct and decisive approach, suggesting it was more effective than the slower processes of international organizations. He presented himself as a leader who could achieve peace where others could not. 7. A strike on Iran. President Trump then spoke about the Middle East. He turned the world's attention to a major event, the United States' strike on Iran's nuclear sites. He presented this action as clear proof of America's great strength. More importantly, he claimed it was key to ending military clashes that had been happening between Israel and Iran. Trump explained his efforts before the strike. He said he had offered Iran a pledge of full cooperation. This offer was made in exchange for Iran stopping its nuclear program. However, he stated that Iran's leaders chose a different path. Their answer, he said, was to keep making threats to their neighbors and to U.S. interests across the region. This refusal, in Trump's view, made the strike necessary. 3 months before his speech, a specific military operation took place. It was known as Operation Midnight Hammer. During this operation, 7 American B-2 bombers were involved. These powerful aircraft dropped 14 very large bombs. Each bomb weighed 30,000 pounds. The target was Iran's most important nuclear facility. Trump declared that this facility was completely destroyed, totally obliterating everything. He emphasized that this was an action many people had wanted to see happen for 22 years. With Iran's capacity to enrich nuclear material now demolished, Trump claimed he immediately acted as a mediator. He said he successfully brokered an end to what was called the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. Both sides, he stated, agreed to stop fighting and engage in no more military conflict. This, he suggested, was a direct result of the U.S. showing its power. However, there was another perspective. Mehdi Mohammadi, an advisor to the chairman of the Iranian parliament, commented on the U.S. attack. He said that the strike was not surprising to them. He also stated that no lasting or irreversible damage was done during the bombings. Mohammadi further explained that Iranian authorities had taken steps to evacuate all 3 nuclear sites that were targeted. This evacuation happened in advance, meaning the sites were empty of personnel when the bombs hit. Trump's speech framed the strike as a decisive move for regional peace and stability, showcasing U.S. resolve. He believed it demonstrated his ability to resolve complex international disputes through a strong stance. 8. A stance on peace. The president then moved to talk about the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine. He spoke to the world leaders about the recent efforts to recognize a Palestinian state. He saw these efforts as a problem for peace. He said that giving statehood to Palestine at this time would be a reward for Hamas. This, he believed, would make true peace much harder to find in the region. He noted that many countries had recently recognized the state of Palestine. He mentioned nations such as Australia, Andorra, Belgium, Canada, and France. He also named Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. He questioned the timing of these actions, suggesting they did not help the cause of lasting peace. The president then stated his strong belief that Hamas had turned down many good chances for peace. He reminded everyone in the hall about the events of October 7, 2023. This was when Hamas launched an attack on southern Israel. He stressed that this day must not be forgotten by anyone. After this attack, Israel started a war in the Gaza Strip, a conflict that continued to cause great suffering. He explained that some members of the United Nations were trying to recognize a Palestinian state by themselves. He felt this approach would only encourage more fighting and conflict. He said that the rewards would be too great for Hamas, calling their actions terrible and unjust. Such a move, he argued, would not bring peace to the Middle East. Instead, he believed it would make the situation even more difficult and complex. He warned against actions that could unintentionally strengthen groups that oppose peace. The president then offered his clear view on how peace could truly be achieved. He said that the conflict could have been solved a long time ago if different choices had been made. He firmly believed that giving in to Hamas's demands for the release of prisoners was not the correct or wise way forward. He urged all who truly wanted peace to come together. They should speak with one clear and powerful voice. That voice, he stated, should demand the immediate release of all hostages being held. He repeated that this was the single most important step for peace to begin. He ended his speech with a direct call for this action, emphasizing its importance for a stable future. He looked out at the assembly, his message clear and firm, conveying his final thoughts on the path to a lasting peace in the Middle East, and indeed around the world.